More coffee.
I was just thinking, that looks like a good idea.
More coffee, baby. How's everybody doing?
All right. Well, I think we just about have everyone on here. I'm going to go through the list here and make sure we do.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
Waiting on a few council members, I believe.
Bio break.
That's right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Tonight in our work session, keep in mind this is a public meeting now, and any residents able to jump in and watch and listen to what's happening in our work session. Then from here, we'll enter into our public city council meeting as well. And tonight, our only work session item is kind of a complete update, if you will, about our project at State Road 37. We're really excited later this week to cut the ribbon on 126 and 37. We were able to accomplish that project this year. This has been a tremendous partnership between Hamilton County and the city of Fishers, as well as NDOT and Noblesville, all working together collectively on a very transformative project. This was a project that actually its origin started, if I can remember back, and we have a guest here that can remember better than I do, but several years ago, Brad Davis at the County Highway Department started looking at this corridor and did a mobility study that really demonstrated the long-term challenges that we had on this corridor if we weren't going to do something significant or profound to try to alleviate a lot of that cross traffic that we've all come to know and dread here in the city of Fishers. And from that point forward, we really started to put together a partnership that allowed us to receive over $100 million. And I say over $100 million from the state of Indiana because the state of Indiana has been gracious enough to step up and do all the inspection work to date on the project, which is a significant cost avoidance for the locals as we've done this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason Taylor. He's our point man on this project for us. He's had the unique experience when we started this project. He was a City of Fishers employee working on getting this project up and off the ground. Then he actually went to NDOT and worked in the leadership capacity at NDOT while we were further trying to execute on this project. And then we stole him back here to Fishers. And so he's seen all sides of this. And along with Jason Taylor, we have Hatem Mekki, who's been our Assistant Director of Engineering. He's been really bird dogging this for us, as well as Brad Davis from the Hamilton County Highway Department. They are all here tonight to give you a complete update on where we stand with this project, some of the challenges that we have had that have been well documented in a lot of media outlets, and be able to answer any questions that you have. So, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Again, Jason Taylor, Director of Engineering. I appreciate you guys giving us the time to present this to you. As the Mayor had stated, there's a large number of people involved in this project. Brad Davis is here to help answer those questions. Hatem, he has been instrumental in delivering this project. And we also have Carrie Ann with Imavex, who's our marketing team. She's got a couple slides at the end to just kind of give you an update of the different pieces that she's been able to collaborate with on the businesses and helping keep them moving during the construction time. I'm going to make an attempt here to share my screen. So please let me know if you are able to see that.
You're good to go, Jason. Yep.
Okay. So again, I appreciate you guys having us here. We're just going to give you a quick overview of where we stand on the project and then really try to answer questions for you. So just try to go through some of these slides and then get to the end, do a Q&A. We're going to talk a little bit about the schedule, the financial updates, where we started and some of the overages, and then some of the things we're trying to do to alleviate those overages in addition to our marketing program. On the project, on the schedule specifically, going from earlier in 2018, we focused on the drainage lines, which is a underground, 20 plus feet detention system that outlets to the White River. We have two lines, a southern drainage line and a northern drainage line. Those were completed earlier this year. And then we're really on track for everything as we projected. There's been some minor adjustments to the schedule, but generally we've been pretty good about it. 126th Street, we are going to be opening up this week, which we're extremely excited to do because we've had what we've seen as minimal impacts to the 37 corridor and the motorists along the local street of 126th. And then here in a few weeks, we're actually going to have 131st interchange go out to bid through the NDOT process, and we'll get some of those in the bids in early next month, or mid next month actually, and we'll be able to review those and then award that early next year to start construction. And then we're furthering the design of 141st Street so that it would be a similar construction, and it stands right now 131st and 141st and 135th. They're all going to be similar construction methodologies as what we're doing on 126th Street. We're still working with the designers and trying to figure out if there's some cost saving measures, but essentially it'll be half at a time. We'll do half the interchange and then we'll flip over and we'll do the other half. All the while we'll be keeping traffic on 37 open and 4 lanes. And then 146, that's a different one. That's rather than a roundabout interchange, that's one that is a 2-year schedule, and it's what we call a single point urban interchange, and similar to 465 and Allisonville Road, if you're familiar with that interchange. That one is a 2-year project because we had a lot of utilities we needed to get out of the way, as well as there were a lot of traffic volumes on 146th Street that we wanted to keep all traffic open during construction for both 37 and 146. A little snapshot for the financial of the project. As the mayor had mentioned, NDOT was a major contributor to the finances. They gave $100 million, and then initially the city and the Hamilton County went joint venture of 50-50 of $12 million each. Where NDOT, in addition, has done some cost reductions by giving us the inspection, which is typically a 10 to 15% cost to the project, as well as we're working with the utilities to try to reduce those. And if at any point during the questions and answers you want me to go back to a slide, I'd be happy to go back. In the 2012 mobility study, it originally planned for 5 interchanges, and what this slide will show you is the original project budget as interchanges was $152 million, but that had interchange at 135th. In addition, it was a narrower typical section. So what we've done on 37 today, when in discussions with NDOT, being that they are going to take this project or this roadway back into their inventory, they've requested that a 3rd lane for future expansion be performed. So really we're getting a 33% more in essence of the project being built with the project today. Then in 2015, we did update the study slightly. That update was to address some of the items related to the cost inflation, unit prices, any inspection that we were going to be doing. And what we did not do is we did not include the $40 million difference between 135th Street interchange between 2015 and 2018. Then here are really some of the key things on why we are more than our original $124 million. Whenever we were progressing through the design of the project, we had to make some tough decisions with guidance from the elected officials, stakeholders, businesses, everyone that was really been involved. Keeping this cross streets, 126th, 131st, 146th, all of them at or near existing grade is a major task to do. So we had to go to a gravity drainage system to be able to outlet that out to the White River. And then some other things were, we originally planned that it would be a grass median without any kind of guardrail or median barrier. But after NDOT, that they are taking this back over, they did request that we put that in, the guardrail, which added cost. But we also had some redesign through the design process. It's pretty typical, no matter what project you're in, you do value engineering, you redesign. So that was part of some additional cost to the project, in addition to the maintenance of traffic. That was something that keeping traffic open, it's hard to predict. And so that was something that we had to, change throughout the design. And what we're seeing is the 126th Street project. That one is one that most of the interchanges can accommodate, where 146 was a unique animal that we needed to be able to keep it open to traffic. So those costs do play a role in it. And then noise walls, utility reimbursements. This is one that you would think, why do we not know why the utilities are out there or why they're reimbursed? With this being that it's a state road, the limited access right-of-way, which typically means that there are no easements. Well, this one has some that went back even further, 100 years, to the point that there were easements for some of these utilities. And so therefore, in order for them to relocate, we are to reimburse them. So there were some preliminary assumptions made that are pretty standard, and good engineering judgment is utilized, but there's some things that cannot be anticipated. And then, as you can see, our construction estimates versus our bid results, if you really focus on the engineer's estimate on our current design, we are really close to where we have been estimating from our construction bid and our engineer's estimate. 126th, our engineer's estimate was approximately $200,000 over what the actual bid price is. Then the drainage lines themselves, they came in pretty close. There was a difference in the 2015 estimate, and that is where we decided to go to a drainage line gravity system versus the pump, which is a lower long-term maintenance cost than if we were to have to maintain pumps along the corridor. As the mayor had mentioned, cost-saving pursuits are continuously going on this project. NDOT has agreed to do the construction inspection for all of the interchanges except for 141st, but we have constantly been in communication with them about 141st and doing that construction inspection, which is just for 131st and 135th. That is approximately $2 million. So we are seeing approximately another $2 million in savings that NDOT is going to provide to us. They have also helped us with regards to that guardrail, that median barrier that they were requiring us to add. They're going to reimburse us at the tail end of the project that actual cost incurred. So they are being a major partner on this project. Tim and Brad and his team have been extremely instrumental in working with the utilities to minimize those costs. One example was that we were able to minimize by $1 million by adding one conflict structure. So there are constant communication with the designers, the utilities, the stakeholders to make sure that we are trying to identify cost savings along the project. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to some of the really exciting stuff that Carrie Ann has been handling on the marketing side. Carrie Ann.
Hi everybody. This is Carrie Ann Rich. I will go ahead and follow up with kind of how we have been playing a part in this initiative, I guess, since 2018. Our role really was to come on board and be a advocate for the businesses along the corridor, and of course, put together a program for externally communicating what would be happening with construction to inform the public. Of course, the piece of playing that role with the businesses was definitely kind of our first and foremost priority, just to, you know, kind of create this collaboration. And so we started out, back in the summer of 2018, we created a 37 Thrive business stakeholder group. And really this was built kind of from the ground up. We had distributed letters via snail mail to businesses within the corridor, asking those that would like to participate in this group to be a part of that. And so we instituted monthly meetups with businesses, and you know, I guess we've had, you know, within the last couple months, adding to this, we've probably had about 24 meetings to date. We started out, you know, with a small group. It has grown. We now have around 125 businesses on our list now that we've moved into the 146th Street section of the project. Really the core efforts of this group was to always be sharing construction updates, to answer questions, be that direct conduit for information that, you know, as businesses are concerned or have anxiety, they have a point person that isn't necessarily, you know, in the city, in City Hall. And then we also kind of use this group as a sounding board for, you know, kind of making things happen as requests come through. So one key piece that, you know, just to highlight is specialty signage has kind of been something that's come from this group and our feedback. So we've been able to issue temporary sign permits for businesses that wouldn't normally maybe get approved. An example of that was when Lockhart Cadillac had their Good Vibes sign promotion last fall. We've also created and placed 37 Thrive branded signage through the corridor so that it was easy access to get to the website address and text alert information. And so that's kind of something that really came out of this collaboration with our business group. We've also created specialty things as businesses have asked for them, whether it's, you know, signage for inside their business that we've created, maps. It's really kind of created this internal marketing department for the businesses in this corridor. Another piece that I think is really important to highlight from our efforts with the advocacy piece is we really wanted this group and this effort to reiterate the importance of direct and transparent information. So we've created a workflow so that as project information is released to my team, then we are able to get that to our stakeholders before it hits the public. So that way, if they know there's going to be lane restrictions or some type of closure, then they have always been able to receive that information directly from us prior to it landing on Facebook or being announced from a media outlet. So that's been a really big game changer in this whole project. Another piece that's been really great is because of this relationship, we have been able to field direct concerns from business owners. So if there's something happening on the job site that's impacting a business and their property, then, you know, they're reaching out, we're getting that fielded. You know, it's many times I've been able to make a call to Hatem or Jason and say, you know, hey, Big Apple Bagels, they've got water coming in. They don't know if it's related to the project, and Hatem and Jason have, you know, had the construction inspector out, you know, immediately. So it's been a huge game changer. We've also utilized our advocacy efforts to, you know, involve business stakeholders in marketing efforts that we are deploying. So whether it's videos that we're producing or radio spots that we have running, social media efforts, we are always reaching out to this business group and asking them to get involved so that they have, you know, a direct way to collaborate during this project. You want to sit up? One piece that you may have seen that we've done throughout, I guess probably about the last year, is our dash cam live videos with Town Post. So we started this as a way to really, first off, drive the corridor, talk about the construction effort, and then get into the businesses that are in the corridor and do some live interviews with them. And so this has been a really popular piece that we have offered to our businesses. And you know, aside from it getting social views and things like that, it's also been a really good, you know, reach out and direct kind of PR effort between the project and the businesses, just to have that one-on-one time and effort through this marketing. And then I think, yeah, this slide, I can't stress enough the importance of all of these businesses that have been a part of our stakeholder group. I think one that's really important to call out would be the YMCA. They have been such a key and critical partner for us. Mostly, you know, they're right there in the kind of in the thick of construction, absolutely. But the other piece is it is such a community with more than 22,000 members in that YMCA. We knew right away that having a direct communication channel with the members was really important, and the Y has been an awesome partner for 37 Thrives. We've spoken to their Silver Sneakers group last winter. We have direct, you know, lines of communication, sharing information with maps, and even, you know, adjusting some of our messaging if our Y partners feel like it might not be clear enough and those types of things. So it's been a really important partnership for us, and we're excited that we're going to, you know, be able to kind of let them breathe a little now that everything's going to be open soon. I think that's my last slide, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know that you guys council members are on a tight schedule, so try to answer any questions you have. I'll leave the slideshow up so if I need to refer back to it.
Jason, maybe, this is Scott, maybe just to summarize before we get into the questions. As we stand here today from your team, the county, city, everyone involved, you know, what additional funding specifically do we think we need to be able to complete this project with the vision that we communicated to our residents throughout the course of this project?
Yeah, as we stand today, the last financial update that provided, we are showing that we are approximately $42 million over the original budget, but that does not take into account some of the cost-saving measures that we've already been able to capitalize on through NDOT performing the inspection, as well as the guardrail, and then some of the utility efforts that we're making to reduce costs. So as it stands today, the amount that we're requesting or that we're showing over would be $21 million from the city, $21 million from the county, but we are really driving that cost down to in the $36 million range is our ultimate goal.
So just to be clear, the arrangement is that 50% of that would be the responsibility of the city of Fishers, 50% of that would be the responsibility of the county. So we're looking at approximately $18 million based on what we know from additional cost savings that we're seeing through NDOT and others.
Correct.
Okay. And we just want to touch base on this a little bit, and John Weingart, feel free to jump in here, but we've been to the Finance Committee on a handful of occasions explaining the strategy for this additional $18 million, and we feel confident that we have a plan in place to be able to fund that $18 million without any tax impact, without an additional tax increase to the residents of Fishers. What we are looking at is kind of two tranches of funding. One would be a smaller amount this spring in the January, February timeframe. I believe, Jason, that's in the $6 million range, if I'm not mistaken. And then the remainder of the funding would be sometime in the fall of next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, you are correct.
So with that, I guess we'd open it up to any questions that council members may have for Jason and Brad and the team. Okay.
This is David. So it sounds like you gave a real good summary of where some of the changes were, and I'd call them changes too. It sounds like NDOT requested some additional items And those
Yeah,
have
there were-
some, like the
Sorry.
wall and things like that. And then, it sounds like the drainage is more of a long-term solution, but that was is that probably the biggest change dollar-wise when you go from, when you go to a gravity fed? So it sounds
I
like
would
that,
say-
and then probably the utilities, by not having easements, that means that the project has to pay for it. So those were the two biggest, because you had a list of about 8, but I think if you drill down, it's probably those 2 are the biggest
Yeah, I would
changes.
say that there are 3, really. You're right, 2 of them. One is the utility cost, not anticipating reimbursements because of the easements. Another one because of the drainage, the upfront cost of that, versus the long-term maintenance of pumps and having to have that because that was something that NDOT would not have accepted. But then the third one would have been right-of-way cost. I didn't really hit that very much in my discussions originally, but the right-of-way costs and appraised values 8 years ago or even 5 years ago to compare to where they are today are drastically different. So those are the 3 I would state are the major contributors.
Okay.
Jocelyn, I think you were trying to say something. I apologize, might have gotten cut off. Did you have a question?
Yeah, could you share more specifics about the plan to fund? I'm gonna stick with 42 million, assuming that's worst case scenario. Hopefully, I appreciate there are cost saving pursuits in place, but there's also parts that haven't gone out to bid yet either. So there's still quite a few question marks. Can you walk us through the game plan for the 42 million?
Sure. So, when we sit down with the finance committee once or twice a year, typically what we'll do is we'll go through our entire debt strategy. And so we look at all of our public debt that we have, and when their maturity dates are, when those tend to roll off. Well, what we realized in about 2024, we have a significant amount of debt rolling off of our tax rolls. And at that time, we would look to layer on this $18 million issuance. So from a tax rate perspective, it would stay neutral. It wouldn't go up. We would keep it at our current tax rate. The schools have done this very successfully over the years, where they make sure that they work on their debt strategy to ensure that they don't see fluctuations for their residents. And this is the same type of strategy we talked about at the finance committee. We feel very confident when we build out our debt model that we can put this additional cost on in 2024 and not have a tax impact or an increased tax rate for our citizens. So that's really the strategy that we have to be able to offset these costs.
So whether it's, I get that, whether it's 18 million or north of that, the strategy is that there would be bonds issued for this, correct?
Yep, that's correct. And there's a significant amount coming off in 2024 that well exceeds even what would be needed for this project. There was a significant amount of road work done, well, I guess would be 25 years ago, that's coming off the tax rolls at that point, and we feel confident we'll be able to absorb this and still not have a tax increase.
And the county, we're assuming the county will contribute and go HASI with us on that, but is that finalized yet?
I would defer to Brad Davis on the call as a representative of the county, but my understanding is that they're in kind of a similar process that we are. Brad, do you want to share anything on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Mayor. Right now, the county council has tabled a request that I made for about $5.6 million. And they tabled that, trying to learn more information about the project, and Tim and Jason came up, I think it was October, gave a very good presentation to them. And right now, it's my impression that at our December meeting, they'll untable that and vote on that. So they're fully aware of the need for the $21 million potentially. But when I approached them, I asked them for it in pieces. So I'm asking for about the $5.6 million that they should vote on the first meeting in December. And then potential for a spring additional of about $3 million, and then the balance would then be once we have a good idea of what the 141st Street interchange cost might be. So that's the county's plan right now, and I do believe they are planning to do some bonding, but I can't speak for them on their exact financial plan.
Fair enough. I'll conclude with just a request. As you mentioned, Mayor, the costs have been in the media for quite some time. I feel like as a member of this body, I haven't had a lot of information, any information about where this stands. So I would request, especially as the project moves at a quick clip and costs are realized, if we could have just regular updates on where things stand. I think that's important.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jocelyn. I think now too, we have a great opportunity where I think we've kind of got a set-in budget projection. And now I think what we can provide to our stakeholders, council members and everyone is, okay, based on what we think it's going to be, are we going to hit that 21 mark or are we going to hit 19? I think as each one of these bid, we'll have a much better idea. And Jason, maybe you could just chime in here. When is the next big kind of tell for our council and for our stakeholders as to are we hitting those marks or not? So when would be the next bid opening that would say, okay, do we hit our mark or did we not hit our mark? What time frame is that, Jason?
It's really going to be here in December whenever we have 131st and 135th Street interchange and intersection out to bid and awarded. That will tell us if we were on track for where we've been projecting. And then the next piece will be as we continue the design of 141st Street for a November timeframe letting of next year, the utilities. And then if there's anything that we are able to work out with them to reduce those costs, because we are working very closely with them to get them to partner with us and outside of the norm.
So I think to your point, Jocelyn, I would hope to have an update in December once we have some additional of these bid documents.
Thank you.
This is John, just want to speak a brief along with the budget process here and a tax increase.
It might be my end, but I'm having a hard time hearing John.
To wrap up and do it as very best we can without a tax increase.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. With that, if there are no other questions in regard to this, I believe at this point we need to move into our public scheduled meeting. So for our official city council meeting, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Cecilia Fogel, our council president, to bring the meeting to order.
Okay. All right. Good evening. I'm going to call the November 16, 2020 City Council meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Before we get started, I just want to confirm those present here for the record, and I'm going to go ahead and start with our city council members. Councilman David George, are you here?
I'm present.
Todd Zimmerman.
Present.
Brad DeReamer. Brad DeReamer, are you here?
Present.
Okay. Sam DeLong.
Present.
John Weingard. I know John's here. Well, John, are you here? Okay. You're muted. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you. Jocelyn Bear.
Here.
Pete Peterson.
Here.
Selena Stoller.
Here.
And I'm here. Are there any staff that could please identify themselves too for the record? Any staff present today?
Chris Greisel.
Go ahead, Chris.
Lisa Bradford.
Tony Bagato, Planning and Zoning.
Jesse Bochelle, Planning and Zoning. And Megan Schaefer, Planning and Zoning.
Jason Taylor, Director of Engineering.
Monica Health, Public Health.
Tracy Gaynor's here with IT.
Ashley Elrod, PR.
Anybody else? Is Jennifer here? Jennifer or clerk?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. With rising COVID numbers in our community in accordance with federal, state, and local guidelines, including recent guidance put forth by the Fishers Health Department, we're conducting tonight's meeting virtually. Tonight's council meeting is being live streamed. Additionally, the council has provided the public with opportunities to participate in this meeting by submitting comments through the city's website. Any comments received have been distributed to the council and will be included in the minutes for tonight's agenda. Finally, although there is limited capacity due to COVID, the City Hall auditorium is open for members of the public to view and participate in tonight's council meeting. With the exception of the council agenda, we're going to take a roll call vote on all items being voted upon tonight. So this evening, we do not have any announcements and we do not have any proclamations. We do have a presentation, a COVID-19 update. As I mentioned before, the Fishers Health Department, the Fishers Board of Health, recently put out several guidelines and directives for our community regarding COVID. And now they're going to share those updates with us this evening.
Monica, feel free to jump in here and if you need to get unmuted. One thing I do want to jump in real quick, because I think there was just a tremendous amount of misinformation that was out there this afternoon and earlier this week around religious institutions and whether our executive order, or excuse me, public health order spoke to religious services or not. Nothing could be farther from the truth. That we were not in any way closing down religious services or people's ability to worship. Before Monica jumps into her overall presentation and an update on what's happening in the city and her team's efforts, I'd like to ask Chris Greisler, our city attorney, to provide some clarifying statements around this misinformation that's being kind of disseminated in our community around religious services. Chris, can you provide that, please?
Sure, happy to do that, Mayor. For the record, Chris Greisel, attorney for the City of Fishers. So with respect to the executive orders that were issued on Friday by the governor's office, he did address religious services, and I'm just going to read exactly what was in the executive order. So it says that virtual services are preferred. Places of worship and faith communities are strongly encouraged to continue or resume live streaming services or otherwise provide virtual or drive-in services to safely serve their communities. Live or in-person religious services, including wedding ceremonies and funeral services, are not subject to limits on social gathering as set forth in this executive order. However, social distancing and other sanitation measures apply, meaning individuals or households must be spaced at least 6 feet apart from any other individual or household. The wearing of a face covering is also strongly encouraged. Wedding receptions and visitations before or after funerals remain subject to the limitations and restrictions for social gatherings as set forth in this executive order. So for those of you who may have been watching the governor's press conference on Wednesday, you know that he spoke directly to religious services and basically summarized it as do the service while maintaining social distancing, but the before and after social gatherings that are taking place in church services, in the governor's opinion, really needs to end. And the governor spoke to a lot of flare-ups across the state that were attributed to these social gatherings, both before and after services. With respect to our own public health order that we implemented on Friday, or the Fishers Health Department through the Fishers Health Board implemented on Friday, religious services have been exempted from our social gathering requirements. So in conjunction with the executive order issued by the governor, we're not placing any capacity limits on religious services. What we are doing, though, is we are providing education to every religious institution out there to talk about these social gatherings that are taking place outside of the main service of their congregation, whether that's before church, after church, throughout the week, and letting them know that we do expect them to comply with our social gathering limitations for those events that are the non-religious service events, and that if they want to exceed those capacity limitations set forth in our own public health order, that they're going to have to work through our Fishers Health Department to get that plan submitted and approved. I know the mayor sent out an email today to those religious services. If you didn't receive a copy as a council member, we'll send that out to you as well, and we'll continue to provide information. I think, the governor's executive order was rather lengthy on Friday, and it came out Friday afternoon, so everybody was anticipating the information that was going to be included in it. But the details obviously tell, a different story, or a story that we were anticipating. And so I think people are continuing to grasp at what those mean. And I know the governor's office has been good at putting out additional FAQs, and we'll continue to do the same here as we continue to hear from folks in our community. I know today the mayor spearheaded a business call that had over 125 participants on it, and some of them were church members as well, asking similar questions. So we are getting this information out as much as we can, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Chris. Monica, did you have any updates for us?
Yeah, thank you. This is Monica Heltz, the Public Health Director for the Fishers Health Department. Can you guys all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So today, as we look at our dashboard and our figures for the city of Fishers and how we're doing, our case incidence rate, and again, we calculate that on a 2-week average, is 48.35. And what that means is that we have an average of nearly 50 cases a day right now for the last 2 weeks. So some days are more. I think we had a day that was pretty close to 100 cases in one day, and some days are less. So right now we're averaging 48.35 cases per day. And we contrast that with the low point since the first case we had in the pandemic. So since then, the low point was on June 16th, where our case incidence rate was 1. So it's a pretty big difference that we've been experiencing lately, and that increase has been rising extremely rapidly. So it's not a slow, subtle increase. It's an extreme and rapid rise. It's pretty reflected on our website dashboard if you guys have had a chance to look at that, how steep the climb is. It's not really different in the steepness of the curve that we're experiencing right now from what we see across the state and across the nation. I mean, everybody is experiencing this currently. This dramatic increase in cases. I can tell you that 692 cases is the number that we've had in the past 14 days versus the total number of cases that we've had throughout the pandemic, which is slightly over 3,000. So the cases that we've had in the past 14 days represent 22% of all of the cases that we've had so far. So again, just underscoring that extremely rapid rise in cases that we're currently experiencing. We've tested through the Fishers Health Department testing mechanism. We've tested 19,207 people for COVID, which is quite a lot. Our Fishers Health Department testing site, so one of the other major metric that we look at typically, aside from our case incidence rate, which tells us the burden of the case per the population, so it's something we can compare against other populations of any size. The other major thing that we look at is our percent positivity rate, and that is an indicator of a few different things, but one of the things that it tells us is how effective our testing is, and are we doing enough testing to potentially try to get ahead of this thing. And what we've seen over the last few weeks on this regard is a big widening of the numbers that we see at our Fishers Health Department testing site versus what we see at the county and the state level on their metrics for percent positivity. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that people may be less likely to test at our Fishers Health Department testing site if they're very sick. They may get tested at a hospital or a doctor's office or in urgent care instead. So we expect that number to be a little bit less than what we find in the rest of the community, in our total percent positivity. But we have a pretty big difference right now. So I am hopeful, and again, I don't want to make any declarative statements that this is the only reason, but I'm hopeful that that indicates that this massive increase in testing that we've committed to and that we're performing is helping us to stay ahead of this, maybe better than some other places where they're not having this much access to testing. So our percent positivity rate from our Fishers Health Department testing site today is 6.87%, and that's on a 7-day average. So it's still not super. It's not under 5%, which we would love to see, or under 3%, or under 1%, but it's much, much less than what we see at the county and the state levels. So right now, the county rate for the percent positivity, and there's two ways to look at this. So on the state website, they reflect the all test positivity rate, which basically doesn't filter out individuals who are tested. So if somebody gets tested 5 times, all 5 of those tests are included in the percent positivity rate on the primary metrics that are shown on the state's dashboard. So the county on that rate is at 11.9%, and the state is at 11.7%. So the state and the county are pretty similar on that. If you look at the individuals tested, like if you only count each person's test once, then we see a big difference, and the state rate is at 22% and the county is at 17.9%. So we're really much, much larger on that rate. And that's the rate that we've primarily been using on our Fishers Health Department dashboard, is the county rate when we're looking at that to try to figure out, like, of our individuals, like what percent are positive right now. So that's where we see this big widening between our Fishers Health Department site and the rest of the county and the rest of the state, and then we have these different measures. So all of that is a little bit confusing. I'm not going to lie, but until very recently, the county and the county rate for the all test rate and the individuals tested rate, our Fishers Health Department percent positivity has typically been near those. But over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a really big widening on those rates. So anyway, all that to say that I think that I'm starting to be very hopeful that our increased testing is starting to pay off and make a difference in regards of getting ahead of this thing from a Fishers standpoint. I can tell you that today we tested 443 people. We had over 500 appointments. The vast majority of those that did not show up were folks tested through our state link, our state health department link. We had 86 come through there, and I think we had maybe 130 appointments at the beginning of the day. So for whatever reason, about 50 of those didn't show, but we tested 357 today through our Fishers Health Department link for that site. So quite a lot of people that we're testing. We're also looking to increase our testing further starting Monday with an additional site. School exposures, so school-based exposures, people that were exposed at school, whether they be staff or students. So we're opening up another site again on Monday. We hope to have perhaps 200 a day availability additionally at that site. I can also say that of the tests that have been performed on Fishers, of the positives that have come out of Fishers, of all of the positive cases, the 3,194 cases in Fishers, 1,104 of those are from our Fishers Health Department testing site. So we have found 35% of our cases in the community from our health department testing site. So these are possibly, up to 1,000 people that would not otherwise have been diagnosed. Not necessarily, but possibly, given the rapid demand and increase in testing and that we're seeing right now. Having this available to our community has really been a benefit. Let's see. The other things that we're doing right now with this rapid increase in cases is we're focusing on our tracers. Our contact tracers. I can tell you that as of today, we have 11 who are actively performing tracing. Most of them are doing that up to 50 hours a week. We also have 6 police officers who are helping us with some of that tracing as well, and they have all been trained to help with the contact tracing follow-up. and we're bringing on additional folks to help with those efforts. We are currently able to we're currently attempting to contact every single positive case that comes out of Fishers, whether they be tested through our Fishers Health Department testing site or whether they be reported to us through the state's mechanism and they had been tested somewhere else. I can tell you that we're able to currently contact anybody who's tested at our Fishers Health Department testing site and anybody who is reported to us from the schools through their process. We're able to test or to start tracing them the same day. And we're able to at least make contact or leave a voicemail for 100% of those the same day. The state contact tracing, the tracing that happens on Fishers residents that get tested elsewhere, that has a kind of a delay into it. So we're attempting to reach all of those people. We have less success with folks that are reported to us in that way, but we attempt to reach all of them. But there is a delay in that process, and part of that process has to do with the reporting of the labs to the state and then the reporting via the state mechanisms to their different systems and back down to us. So we're doing what we can on that. And again, we're trying to increase those contact tracing efforts on all fronts in order to get to everybody that we need to get to. I can also tell you that, that we have mixed success as far as people following the guidelines. We spend a heavy amount of time with them on education in order to prevent people not following, the best guidelines that are out there. And when you're contact active COVID, then we want you to maintain quarantine for 2 weeks from your last exposure. We're hearing of a lot of our community members who are not maintaining those quarantines or who are trying to interpret the quarantine guidelines in a way that is suitable to them or less restrictive. So we spend a lot of time and effort trying to re-educate and put additional guidance and documentation out there and to push that through all of our various channels to make sure everybody has an opportunity at least to be exposed to the guidelines multiple times in multiple formats. I'm trying to think of what else.
Monica, this is Scott. So to your knowledge from around the state, are there very many other health departments that actually have been, or I know now they're having to do it, but prior to this, were they doing any kind of contact tracing?
So the contact tracing in the very, very beginning was being done by all of the county health departments. And then it was in about the middle of May that the State Department of Health took it over from all of the local health departments, and they started performing all of the contact tracing. We decided not to do that, particularly for our folks that are tested at the Fishers Health Department testing site, just because of those built-in delays. So the things that we could control the most easily were our testing site, because we have those results available to us immediately, and we don't have to wait that extra 1 or 2 or 3 days for them to go through the process that it takes to get them through the state contact tracing program.
Two more things, and then I'll turn it over to council for any general questions for you. One, what are you seeing in terms of turnaround times in our lab capacity? Because I think that was a lot of angst earlier this summer over a short period of time. And what has been our average turnaround time in general? And then secondly, because we did contact tracing and we had the data, what is it telling us about the chapter of this virus that we're in now? What are the lessons we've learned from the contact tracing that has provided us to really guide us in this journey over the last week or 2 weeks? So those two questions, if you could answer those and turn it over to council for any additional questions.
So our testing turnaround time, since that bumpy period in the middle of summer when, the nation as a whole was experiencing some delays in the testing turnaround, right now it's looking pretty good, even with the rapid increase in demand for testing. We're still under 2 days on our Fishers Health Department testing site. For the most part, it's 1 day turnaround time. Occasionally it bumps up to 2 days over the weekend or, for whatever reason. The lab, has priorities as well to go through, but it's been pretty consistently under 2 days. For our other testing process, which is through the state's lab, that one is running on average about 3 days. We have about half of the results from Saturday's testing back from that site though. So that's actually, again, it's running, I would say, on average about 3 days. Occasionally we see it down to 2 and occasionally over closer to 4. So those testing turnarounds are doing pretty well. right now. And then the second question was, can you remind me again what the second question?
Well, because you've done
what it was-
contact tracing
Yeah.
and you've been looking at it, what drove the latest, other than the number going, exponentially higher, which we're all aware of,
Right.
what allowed you and Dr. Lane to plot the course that ultimately the next day the governor reinforced or reaffirmed? What's driving your rationale behind that?
So we're seeing in our data the same things that are reflected at the state and national stage, quite frankly. And that is that these social gatherings and informal settings, particularly in the homes, are where the vast majority of people are attributing their contracting the coronavirus to. What we have on our contact tracing reports is that approximately 50% of all cases where if they know or they think they knew where it came from, that it was in someone's home, like directly in their residence. And then another percentage, and I don't have those percentages in front of me, I apologize, but it's something in the neighborhood of 15% would be at social gatherings such as weddings or things outside of an individual's home, but they're still in the social gathering category. And then, in smaller categories, we have, dining out with friends, and, perhaps at a gym or at a church function or something like that. Any kind of social gathering or gatherings where people are in groups together is really where we're seeing the vast majority of that. And we suspect, and again, we haven't been collecting data and doing active community monitoring here, but we suspect it has to do with the fact that in those settings, people are more likely to feel safe and protected because they know the people they're around, and so they're less likely to use their masks and have distancing in place and use the sanitation protocols that we know are the mitigation steps that work and that we're employing so successfully in our businesses. But we need to really do a better and a more thoughtful job in our personal interactions with our friends and our neighbors and our family.
Great. One other quick question, just high level. We've belabored this with we've been on a number of calls with restaurants, businesses today, last week, but just real high level, our specific orders, not the governor's, because people can go look at the governor's orders, but our specific orders, the additional items that we're asking residents. Can you touch on just a few of those, please?
Yeah, so some of them center around restaurants and bars because we know that there's a pretty significant amount of spread that happens in those settings and because of the necessity to take off a mask when you're eating. And then with bars, it has to do with that, or when you're drinking, you remove your mask, but it also has to do with the more people drink alcohol, the less comfortable they become, the more loudly they may speak, and then have an increased ability to transmit the virus. And then we look at crowded settings. So in some of the orders across the country, you may see nightclubs singled out. We haven't done that, so I don't want to imply that we have. So ours really have focused on those kinds of opportunities where people are likely to be crowding, and in order to limit that crowding, so examples of that would be allowing for no bar service, so no service at the bar. They can still sit at a table in the bar area, but they must be seated and they must be at a table in order to receive service in a bar setting. Restaurant capacity for table capacity must be limited to 8 people at a table, so that you're not encouraging these large groups of 15, 20, 50 people at a table in restaurants, because again, the idea is to limit these opportunities for these social gatherings where we know that this is being transmitted. Also to increase the amount of time that people have their masks on when they're in that setting. So they are to keep their masks on when they're seated at their table in a restaurant, except for when they're eating and drinking. So again, you don't get a free pass as soon as you sit down, but really the idea is to keep that mask on, when it's reasonable to do so, which would include while you're waiting for your food or while you're waiting for your bill.
And then the one other point of clarification, Monica, on the extracurricular activities, if you could touch on that, kind of where we started, ultimately where we ended up. I think if there's some confusion out there on that, that would be helpful.
Right. So the extracurricular activities, again, we started that proposal last week. with the idea to try to figure out how to prioritize in-person learning for our students in our community, because we know, and all of the information that's out there right now, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, all say that school is by and large one of the safest places for our kids to be right now. They have these mitigation measures in place, and they have strict protocols, even in the setting of a communal setting, such as a school, which is a large congregate setting. Those are normally considered higher risk settings, but given that COVID affects students less than it does folks of advanced age, and that the disadvantages of not being in school are so high, all of the evidence and research right now is telling us that we should prioritize in-person learning for school. So with that in mind, we had to think of other ways that we can allow for that prioritization and decrease the risk in that setting. And the ways that we could do this were to decrease the amount of additional exposures the students were facing, which would include extracurricular activities and other groups coming into the school. So we had initially proposed to limit those opportunities for the students. Shortly after that, the school board of HSE, not the other schools, but the school board of HSE decided to make 7th through 12th grade students virtual. And following that decision, then the Board of Health recommended that we, rather than cancel all extracurriculars and sporting activities and things like that, that they would recommend instead that we approve the plans for those activities to increase the mitigation measures that they were able to put in place, rather than canceling them outright. So that is what is in the current public health order, is that we will approve and, suggest any improvements to those plans. And then for any kind of events, such as like basketball game or something like that, then they are limited to having only the participants, the staff, and the parent or guardians present at the event.
Right. Thank you, Monica. I'd entertain any questions from the council at this time for Monica.
Do any of the city council members have any questions?
Yeah, so this is David George. I just wanted to mention a couple things more, just to kind of share an experience that I think was positive for what Fishers has put together. Some people know I had COVID in October, and it was somebody that was at work that I didn't really have a lot of interaction with, but the minute that I found out that they were positive, most of us went and tested ourselves. We went to Nora. It was closer to where we were. It was a quick test, so within 15 minutes we had a result, and it was negative for me, but I stayed home that week just out of safety. And then about halfway through the week, I started to feel some cold symptoms. Nothing horrible at that time, but it just kind of concerned me. So the following Monday, which is actually, I think, the council meeting in October, I went and tested that morning again at the rapid one, and it was positive. So I immediately called Fishers because I wanted a second test. And so I got a second one there, and both were positive. I had that in about 24 hours. So that kind of helped me to know that 2 tests, 2 labs, 2 different settings, and both positive. So that kind of helps to know that the testing works. And then my other experience was I almost immediately, like Monica said, I had a call from Fishers, and it wasn't called this council guy, it was just called this guy that tested positive. And they walked through the amount of days before and the amount of days after, and I was able to say that, I didn't go out, I didn't go to church, I didn't go to Taekwondo, which the other things that I do outside of work. And they said, well, thank you. You did what you were supposed to, even though I was negative, just out of caution. And then this is not a negative, it's just a statement of what happened for me. About a week later, I got a letter from the state. So the NORA test went through the state, and it had a phone number on it, so I called it. A week after that, they called me back and got a voicemail, and I called them, and it was fine. It was good tracing, but it was almost 2 weeks after my positive test. I think everybody knows stay home and all that stuff, but there's probably some of the population that doesn't. So that's just my personal experience, that some of the testing, I believe it works, whether it's the rapid or the otherwise. And just the way the Fishers people work, they called me very quickly and helped me understand how many days before and how many days after. So I was able to basically stay at home for 3.5 weeks, which was not fun at all. But I did that, and so anyway, that's just my experience. I just wanted to share that for whoever's listening or who might listen to this later.
Thanks, David. Thanks for sharing. Is there anybody else from the council that have questions for Monica? Jocelyn there?
Not so much a question, Cecilia, just more of a comment. Monica, this is John Weingart. David's absolutely right. This testing is important. My next door neighbor had open heart surgery last week, and as part of his process to get home, he had everybody in his home tested, and guess what? His son tested asymptomatic. So you look at that the testing and ability to get that young man out of their house so this gentleman could come home, because if he would have caught COVID, it would have been a very, very difficult transition for him. So I know you've gone through a lot, Monica, and you're getting a lot of response. But I really thank you for what you're doing out there. You know, you probably saved this gentleman's life. That's a dear friend of ours and a next door neighbor for the last 20-some years. So thank you very much.
Thanks, John, for sharing. Jocelyn, there, did you have a question?
Yes, please. First of all, I would like to thank you, Monica and Dr. Lane and the rest of your entire team at the Fishers Health Department. You must be working very hard, and this is an incredibly difficult time. So thank you. I also wanted to thank, there were no fewer than 50 Fishers citizens that submitted an online comment for tonight's meeting about COVID, about the health department, and I thank them for that outreach with comments and questions. As I reviewed those quickly before the meeting, I noticed each one of them has concerns. Each one of them, frankly, a little or a lot, has a different take on our situation. Many of them are maybe exhibiting a lack of confidence in our health department and instruction or knowledge of the instructions or guidance that the health department is asking them to take. So, I know public health is public communication. That's probably the biggest tool you have in your toolbox. So just my request is, I really feel strongly where we are right now. We need to amp it up. And I would love to see every communication tool in our toolbox helping to communicate to the public your recommendations, where we are, best practices. It's confusing and it's hard information to adhere to. It's no fun. But I do know we need to get this community unified as we move further into the fall and winter, and we need to establish that confidence in the Fishers Health Department. So be consistent, be clear, be honest, set good examples, adhere to the goalposts, and be out in front of it instead of reacting slowly, and we can get through this together. That's my request, and maybe a little bit of a pep talk too, but thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Monica, and your health department team. You're doing a great job. I know this is a hard time and it's stressful, and we just appreciate everything you're doing. And I think these stories are a testament of what Fishers is trying to do to be proactive and to help the community have a better sense of what's going on within our local community. So thank you. So with that, we're going to move on to the Finance Committee report. There was no meeting today in November, but our chairman of the Finance Committee, John Weingart, has an update for us.
Thank you, President Colbold. Yeah, the Budget Finance Committee did not meet this month. However, we did just wanted to report to the council as well as the committee at large. We did receive our levy approval for the health department that is a part of our budget. So just trying to kind of tie a bow on our budget that's coming up here for 2021. We did receive that additional levy, which is great news for us, which amount is $898,120 that will be coming our way. That was going to the county, that will be coming to us. So just an update for council and for the public at large, let them know that we did get this levy appeal, and it worked out well. And thank you to Lisa and Chris and Scott and everybody did an outstanding job. This budget has been started out a very painful process to become a very wonderful process that we did a lot of great things, a lot of things coming up. So thank you.
Thanks, John. That's great news. Thank you very much for the report. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of two items. Item A is a request to approve the regular minutes from the last meeting, from the council meeting, October 19, 2020, and the executive session. And item B is a resolution authorizing the city of controller to transfer certain funds. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This
So
is
moved.
Pete, motion to approve.
Motion by Pete Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, I'm sorry,
Second.
by John?
Yep.
By John Weingart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Cecilia, just real quick, for Chris Greisel, this is David. Since I was not at the meeting, I think I don't miss a lot of meetings, so I just want to make sure, can I vote yes on this, just acknowledging that the minutes are there, or abstain?
So David, you'll abstain from item A on the consent agenda, and then you can approve item B, which is the control of the fund.
Okay. Then for Jenny Kale, this is David. I'll be abstaining from 6A, but voting positive for 6B.
Thank you. Thank you, David. We're going to move on to the regular agenda, to the economic development portion of our meeting. We're going to be looking at R111620D. It's a resolution approving the First Amendment to Declaration of Covenants and Easements related to the Spark Garage. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan Baumgartner for her presentation. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. For the record, Megan Baumgartner, Director of Economic Development for the City of Fishers. This first item is an amendment to the Declaration of Covenants and Easements for the Spark Apartments, the garage for it. As council may recall, for all of these public parking garages that are part of our mixed-use developments, there's always a declaration and covenants that lays out and details the responsibilities of each party that's involved in that garage and then development. With the Spark Garage, since this was done in 2016, and that the project came online in kind of a few different phases, the operations of the garage actually worked much more streamlined than what was originally considered. So the amendment for tonight is actually cleaning up and streamlining the different responsibilities within here. The main thing for council to know is we have these funds allocated within the economic development budget each year for the capital reserve fund, and everything is budgeted for, so there's no sort of change in our responsibility or costs associated with the garage. Again, it's just a cleanup for this item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R111620D?
Motion approved.
This is Pete, motion to approve.
Motion by John Weingart. He beat you to the punch. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second
second
by
it, Todd.
Todd Zimmerman. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any discussion. So for discussion purposes, I'm going to go ahead and ask each council member whether they have any additional comments or questions. David George, would you like to start?
No questions.
Thank you. Todd Zimmerman?
No questions.
Okay. Brad DeReamer? Do you have any questions, Brad? I'm not sure Brad's there. We'll go on to Sam DeLong. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. John Weingart?
No questions, thank you.
Jocelyn Dare?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Pete Peterson? No?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Selena Stoller?
No questions.
And I don't have any questions either. Brad, do you have any questions? Okay, I'm assuming he does not. So I'm going to go ahead and call a vote on the First Amendment of the Declaration of Covenants and Easements for the Spark Garage, Resolution R111620D. And I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and call a roll call vote.
Cecilia Coble.
Aye.
And do I have your permission to electronically sign all the documents this evening?
Clerk, Chris, is that all right? We do that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Jennifer.
Selena Stoller.
Aye, and yes, you may sign my documents.
Okay. David George.
Aye, and yes.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
and may I sign the document for you?
Yes.
John Weingart,
Aye, and you may sign, thank you.
Brad DeReamer,
Hey, Jennifer, I was texting Brad. He got kicked off twice. He's having issues to connect. He's trying to get back on.
okay. Todd,
Aye, and yes, you can sign.
Samantha DeLong,
Aye, and yes.
Jocelyn.
Aye, and yes. Thank you.
The motion passes.
Thank you, thank you. Is Brad back on? We're gonna get Brad back on. We're gonna move on to item 8, R11111620E, and it's a declaratory resolution establishing real property as an economic revitalization area and granting an abatement to INCOG. And I'm gonna turn that over to Megan Baumgartner for her presentation, please. Go ahead, Megan.
For the record, Megan Baumgartner, Director of Economic Development. This is a follow-up resolution to the Economic Development Agreement that City Council approved last month. For those, just as a refresher, this is for INCOG Biopharmaceuticals. They are a newly formed biopharmaceutical company planning to build their facility and start operations here in Fishers. As part of that, we agreed to a 13-year personal property tax abatement and a 1 full year, 1 half year, assuming there's a partial assessment of the real property. So this is the declaratory resolution for that. I will note that as the process is typically to do the declaratory resolution, then a confirmatory resolution. As they're finalizing the purchase of the land, we didn't include the SB1 today. That will be brought forth to council in December once they finalize the purchase and the sale of the land. But the abatement terms would still be the same as what we had described in the EDA last month. So this is for the property along Exit 5 Parkway and 121st and Cumberland Road, right, kind of where the intersection of those properties are along I-69. Happy to answer any questions about this resolution.
Thank you, Megan. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R111620E?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Todd Zimmerman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by John Weingart. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for a discussion. And do you have any questions, David George?
I do not.
Okay. Todd Zimmerman?
I do not.
Brad DeReamer?
Do not.
Sam DeLong?
No questions.
John Weingart?
No questions, thank you.
Jocelyn Bear?
No questions.
Pete Peterson?
No questions.
Selena Stoller?
No questions.
Okay, I'm going to call a vote for the declaratory resolution establishing real property as an economic revitalization area and granting an abatement for NCOG, resolution R111620E. I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and take a roll call vote again.
Celia Coble,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
David George,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer.
Aye.
Do I have your permission to electronically sign your document?
Yes.
Okay. Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
Samantha DeLong,
Aye.
Jocelyn Bear.
Aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're gonna move on to item 9R11620F. It's a resolution approving the First Amendment to a project agreement, SPF 15. And I'm gonna turn that over to Megan Baumgartner for presentation.
Thank you again, Megan Baumgartner, Director of Economic Development for the City of Fishers. As council may recall, in September, we brought forward an amendment to the hotel project agreement, the Nickel Plate Hotel project, which was kind of the third component of the large 116th Street redevelopment project. We had extended potential closing date and construction timeline just because of delays that came up because of COVID. So as we were working with SPF 15, First Internet Bank, and their development group, wanting to correspond and line up all of the different construction timeframes that they have, as they're also experiencing some delays in construction. So this is extending their construction timeframe. It's also extending the timeframe for them to transfer the property to the Nickel Plate Hotel or the hotel project, which is part of their commitment. And it's also transferring a certain amount of the property that they currently own that will be part of the trail plaza and staircase area. So those are the primary changes here. I'm sure if you've driven along 116th Street, you've seen that they're making some great progress. It's an absolutely gorgeous building. So we don't anticipate any significant delays. But again, just trying to clean everything up. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R111620F?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Selena Stoller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Todd Zimmerman. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for any discussion. David, George?
No questions?
Okay, Todd Zimmerman,
No questions.
Brad DeReamer,
No question.
Sam DeLong,
No questions.
Jocelyn Dare,
No question. Thank you.
John Weingart,
No questions?
Steve Peterson,
No questions.
Selena Stoller.
No questions.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call a vote on the First Amendment to the project agreement for SPF 15, Resolution R111620F, and I'll ask the clerk to take a roll call vote, please.
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
David George,
Aye.
Steve Peterson,
Yes.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer,
Aye.
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
Samantha DeLong,
Aye.
Jocelyn Dare.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're now going to move on to the budget and financial portion of our agenda. We're going to look at item 10R111620A. It's a resolution approving a lease between the Fishers Redevelopment Authority and the Fishers Redevelopment Commission with respect to State Road 37, Phase 2 project and addressing matters related thereto. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Bradford for her presentation.
Thank you, Cecilia. For the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. So the item before you approves a lease between the Redevelopment Authority and the Redevelopment Commission as leasee and is used to pay a debt service amount of the Redevelopment Authority. And as mentioned, this is related to State Road 37. As our Director of Engineering, Jason Taylor, talked to you guys today earlier about State Road 37 and the cost overruns related to it. This is related specifically for the portion that is 131st Street. As discussed earlier, we're going to do this in essentially 2 stages. So right now, this is going to be the first part of financing related to 131st, and when they get those bids back, we will then actually take the bond amount in the exact known amount. The amount is authorized up to $6.8 million.
that does include capitalized interest. So the closer amount that will probably be the cost needed for State Road 37 is between 5.2 and 5.6 million. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R111620A?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by John Weingart. Do I have a second?
Second by Selena.
Second by Selena Stoller. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for discussion. David George, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, the only question real quick, I know, Jason did give a nice presentation, during the work session. And is that accessible anywhere just for the public? I guess, Mayor, is that like on a link somewhere? Since it's kind of.
If that if that specific presentation isn't, we'll get it up there on our State Road 37 website as well as on our, city webpage. So we'll make sure it's out there,
Okay, thanks. That's it, Cecilia. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd Zimmerman, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Brad DeReamer?
No question.
Thank you. Sam DeLong?
No questions.
John Weingart?
No questions.
Jocelyn Bear?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Lisa, can you just explain a little bit more? I'm just not sure if I understand, like, the lease. Can you just provide a little bit more information? I'm just not sure if I'm tracking.
So basically, it's the financing mechanism. So basically, it's the redevelopment authority is the lessor, the redevelopment commission is the leasee, and then the city council approves the issuance of those, and it is to issue the bonds for State Road 37. So it's just in essence more of a governmental financing mechanism of the structure.
So what does Allisonville Road have to do with it?
When you do a lease deal, when you do a bond that is structured as a lease, you have to have a asset that is leased. That is the equivalent amount of the bonds you're issuing. So when you see Allisonville Road, as mentioned, that means that that is the asset that is essentially being kind of the collateral, is how I would term it. It's the equivalent asset amount of the bond. Does that make sense?
Yes, that helps me a lot. And my understanding is, please correct me if I'm wrong, this arrangement is not unusual?
No, this is a standard Indiana financing mechanism that's done by kind of all cities and towns.
I would add one thing, Councilwoman Bear. It is unusual, but it is standard, if that makes sense. There's nothing logical necessarily about the way Indiana law has us issue debt. It has a lot to do with constitutional debt limits that were set a number of decades ago, and then some additional deductions that were added into the state legislature in the 90s, which then created this entire genre of town hall building corporations and redevelopment authorities. Most important for the taxpayer, which I know is something, in terms of direct communication, the things that you focus on. I think what people need to know is, just like any other bond that's backed by property taxes, this is the same concept. It's just being issued through various legal entities, town hall building corp, redevelopment authority, redevelopment commission. But for a resident, they should know that this is a property tax backed debt that is 25 years when we do issue its permanent financing.
Thank you. I appreciate that translation. I needed it. So thank you. And this is 6.8 million. So if we look at I call it a cost overrun on State Road 37, 42 million. This is part of that 42 million, correct?
Yes. And so this is, like Jason Taylor mentioned, this is related to 131st. So when the letting comes in December, we will know the exact amount. And so we will authorize what that amount is for 131st. And that's the amount we'll take out actually in that. So it is set to be maybe, as Jason potentially mentioned, worst case scenario, maybe a 5.6 but that's a worst case scenario. If it's lower than that, then we'll issue the bond in the amount of, 5.1 or 5.2.
But
So it
to
has
your,
that.
to your specific question, Councilwoman Bear, this would be part of the 21 million that we're contemplating. It's not in addition to the 21, it is part of the 21 million.
Okay. All right. Thank you both very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for clarifying. Pete Peterson, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Selena Stoller?
No questions.
Okay, I'm now gonna call a vote for resolution R111620A. It's the lease between the Fishers Redevelopment Authority and the Fishers Redevelopment Commission with respect to the State Road 37 Phase 2 project. And I'll ask the clerk to take a roll call vote.
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
David George,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer,
Aye.
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
Samantha DeLong,
Aye.
Jocelyn Bear.
Aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're gonna move
You're
on to item 11 on the agenda, R111620B. This is a resolution approving certain matters in connection with the Consolidated Fishers I-69 Economic Development Area. And I'm gonna turn it over to Lisa Bradford for her presentation.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. If I could, I'm going to just talk about items 11 and 12 together, and then you can vote on them separately, but they're related. So I think it makes sense to talk about them as one, essentially. So item number 11 is an addition of specific parcels to our downtown I-69 economic development area. Basically, it's adding some of our current projects that have been done into downtown, such as the Flexware building, the BW building, into our TIF parcel downtown. Simply an administrative item. And this has been approved by the Redevelopment Commission and also Planning Commission. And then item 12 essentially removes a parcel in the Saxony area. Basically, this removes the community hospital parcel. As the community hospital area has been growing, its exempt area has increased and kind of has been dragging down the value of the TIF area in general. And so that's the reason that we are going to pull that out of the Saxony parcel. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R111620B?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Selena Stoller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Todd Zimmerman. I'll go ahead and open it up for discussion. David George?
I do not, and I'll make it easy. I do not on 11 or 12 have a question.
Great. Todd Zimmerman?
The same as David, no questions on either one.
Okay, Brad DeReamer?
Agreed, no questions on 11 or 12.
Sam DeLong?
No questions on either.
John Weingart?
No questions on either one, thank you.
Jocelyn Bear?
I have no questions on either one.
Pete Peterson?
No questions on either.
Okay, I'm gonna call a vote for resolution R111620B. This is a resolution approving the certain matters in connection with the Consolidated Fishers I-69 Economic Development Area. Clerk, could you please take a roll call vote?
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
David George,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
John Weingart,
Aye.
Brad DeReamer,
Aye.
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
Samantha DeLong, Aye. Jocelyn Bear,
Aye.
the motion passed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 12, the R111620C, the resolution approving certain matters in connection with the Olea Road I-69 Economic Development Area. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Selena Stoller, do I have a second?
Second by Sam.
Second by Sam DeLong. I'm gonna open it up for discussion. Any more discussions? Looks like we don't, so I'm gonna call for a vote on resolution R01111620C, the resolution approving certain matters in connection with Olea Road, I-69 Economic Development Area. Can I ask the clerk to take a roll call vote, please?
Cecilia Coble,
Aye.
Selena Stoller,
Aye.
David George,
Aye.
Pete Peterson,
Yes.
John Weingard,
Aye.
Brad DeRemer,
Aye.
Todd Zimmerman,
Aye.
Samantha DeLong,
Aye.
Jocelyn Bear,
Aye.
the motion passed.
Great, thank you. We're gonna move on to the planning and zoning. Item 13111620. This is a consideration of a rezone from R2 residential and AG agricultural to I1 industrial for expansion of the U.S. Foods Distribution Center. And I'm gonna turn it over to Tony Bagato for his presentation.
This
Thanks,
item will be
Cecilia.
presented by Megan, yeah.
Yep, Megan Schaefer here with the Planning and Zoning Department. Tracy, I did have a presentation for this. Wasn't sure if I was able to share my screen. Great. All right, so good evening. For the record, Megan Schaefer with the Planning and Zoning Department. The item before you is first reading for the rezone for the U.S. Foods Distribution Center expansion. So Ice Miller, on behalf of U.S. Foods, is requesting the rezone. This is located east of Cumberland Road on the south side of 126th Street, just east of their existing U.S. Foods facility. So shown here is the existing zoning. They are proposing to rezone 4 parcels that are currently zoned R2 and agricultural. They're proposing a rezone to I1 industrial to allow for the distribution center, as the current zoning prohibits that use. So shown here is the site plan for the proposed expansion. This will be required to go through our TAC process. Access to the site will remain unchanged, except for truck access will be exclusively off of Cumberland Road. This has been reviewed by A&F Engineering, and they do not believe that traffic will be negatively impacted, although some signal times may need modified. And then any necessary right-of-way or entrance improvements will be determined during our TAC review. So just showing some renderings of the proposed site. So this is a rendering of the expansion looking west. A buffer will be required between the existing residential properties and this expansion. This will be a large size buffer yard, which is our largest of the UDO requirements. Here's an additional zoomed in look, again looking west. They are leaving some green space in case there was a need for a future building expansion. And this here shows the view from I-69. So the facade shown here will need modified to meet today's architectural standards for industrial buildings. And then landscaping along I-69 will also need to meet minimum UDO requirements. So that'll look a little different than what's shown here today. This is planned to go before Plan Commission for a public hearing in December. And is before you for first reading tonight. So staff does recommend that you hold first reading, provide feedback, and send the item to Plan Commission. If all goes as planned, this item will be back before you for final approval in January. We've also got Tim Oakes on the call with Ice Miller, so I will turn it over to Tim to add anything else.
Thank you. President Coble, members of the council, Tim Oakes of Ice Miller representing U.S. Foods. I'll just add a few things. I don't want to repeat what Megan already covered. But US Foods is one of the largest wholesale food distributors in the United States, and it, as hopefully most of the council members are familiar with their site that exists southeast of the corner of 126th in Cumberland. It provides food services to over, at least nationally, 300,000 different food service operators, including restaurants and hotels. As you might imagine, with COVID, it's been a difficult pandemic for a number of businesses, and US Food probably would be fair to say fits in that category, since a lot of its customers are hotels and restaurants in particular. Notwithstanding that fact, this Indianapolis and this site is important to US Foods. It looks forward to expanding in the near future. This is probably, to be fair, a 3 to 5 year horizon in terms of the project. But that's a reflection of COVID, and also a reflection of wanting to acquire the real estate while it's still available. Without the real estate, they just can't expand here in the Indianapolis market, and in the central Indiana market is critical to them. The initial expansion would be approximately 69,000 square feet in size. Anticipated cost all in, hard and soft costs, is a little over $20 million. Currently, there are about 320 employees that operate there. They do a 24/7, or as I was informed, a 24/6.5. They do shut down on Saturday evenings. Operation, which is good because it spreads the traffic generated by the project out across the day, so it doesn't have the typical peak hours that occur during rush hours, either in the AM or the PM. To the extent there is any peak traffic from the trucks, it's when they leave in the morning, which occurs about 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., which is actually before peak hour times, which is good in terms of the impact. And as Megan mentioned, A&F Engineering has taken a look at this and does not believe that there are any issues. The expansion will utilize the same access points. There are currently two, 126th and Cumberland. Right now, the main access and entrance for trucks is 126th. We anticipate that changing. The other access point will probably be used for automobile traffic for customers and for employees. For safety purposes, US Foods likes keeping the automobile traffic separate from the primary route for truck traffic. Also worth noting that we've also filed a voluntary annexation petition for the property as well, that will be coming along in the future. With that, I know US Foods is very excited about this project, and be happy to answer any questions that the council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm now going to open it up for discussion with any city council members that might have questions or comments. David George?
Yeah, Tim, it looks like a good project and a good use to expand, obviously not to get landlocked in the future. So, and it sounds like some modernization of the facade. So that's nice to hear. And then the only thing, and I think I've answered it, but there's a little bit of a drive, and I think it's just the existing one that comes out to 126. So when that's shown as green, is that just your intent, is to kind of, that'll just be grass in the future, and then along the other side to the east, just shows grass, and that could be future expansion after this?
That is correct. That access drive that currently serves the property that would be acquired, that would not be used. As a matter of fact, if you can, at least on my screen, the proposed site plan, as you could see, the landscape buffer cuts right across that existing road, so it will be closed and won't be used.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else, Cecilia?
Thank you. Todd Zimmerman?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Brad DeReamer,
No question.
Sam DeLong,
No questions.
okay, John Weingart,
No questions.
Jocelyn Dare,
All the truck traffic is off Cumberland Road exclusively.
That is the proposal. Right now, truck traffic uses, the access point on 126th Street.
Thank you.
okay. Pete Peterson,
No questions.
Selena Stoller.
No questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to give ordinance 111620 the first reading?
First reading.
Thank you, Selena Stoller. Ordinance 11620 is given the first reading, and it will go now to the Plan Commission for a public hearing, and consideration will come before the City Council again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving on to item number 14. 111620A, it's consideration of a rezone of 118.75 acres from R2 to PUDR. Property is located at the corner of 113th Street and Southeastern Parkway. The project is known as Grantham PUD. And I'm going to turn this over to, is it Tony Bagato?
It'll be me, Jesse Boschel,
Okay,
Planning
okay.
and Zoning. Give me
Thank
one
you,
second.
Jesse.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
For the record, Jesse Boschel with Planning and Zoning. The item before you is first reading of ordinance number 111620A, Grantham PUD. Just to give you an idea of where the location is, this project came before you in the past. It was a larger subdivision. It is at the corner of 113th Street and Southeastern Parkway. They have eliminated the corner here at the Southeastern and 113th Street and the estate residential lot that was a part of it. So it is now just the 118.75 acres of the Becker Estate. Subject property is all zoned R2. Just to give you an overall site plan here, it's going to consist of two districts. It's going to be the Executive District, which is to the south, that will enter on 113th Street. It will have 98 lots, and then at the north part of the property, it will be the family lots, and there will be 112 of those. Development standard-wise, the Grantham PUD, 118.75 acres. The Executive District the lot sizes will be a minimum of 11,700 square feet, and the Family District will be a minimum of 9,500 square feet. R2 zoning requires 15,000 square feet, so it's just a fluctuation in size for that. Open space, it will meet the UDO with tree preservation at 40%. The buffer yard, with the current UDO standards, none is required, but they will be providing additional landscaping on the lots that are adjacent to Nestledown Farms, so that it goes above and beyond because it is a similar use, so they are going above and beyond for them. And then required for reduced standards listed above in the UDO with tree preservation, they will be preserving the trees along 113th Street and as many as possible within the development to maintain that natural character. So just to give you an idea here, this is the west portion of the Executive District. All these lots that have the black dot are going to be at least 100 feet wide by 200 feet deep, and we'll have the additional landscaping. That's just to be complementary to the Nestledown Farms estate residential and to be very considerate of what is there. Just to give you an idea of the homes that will be built in the Executive District, here are the some of the elevations. This was approved the first go around by PUD committee, but it will go back before our PUD committee just for to see if there's any additional comments. Executive District, the Becker Estate on 113th Street currently has a gated entry. The plan is for the developer, who is Platinum Properties, to maintain as much as possible the gate along 113th Street and have a gated entry and exit for the executive district. Just to give you an idea here with what is there. The family district, here are some of the elevations for the family district. From the comprehensive plan perspective, the low density suburban residential is what this is considered, which is 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre. R2 zoning allows from 1.0 to 1.7 per acre, and the subdivision is proposing 1.68 per acre. So, it's well within what is, what has been planned for this area and falls within what is allowed. Again, just showing you R2, 1.0 to 1.7 dwelling units per acre. In total, that would be 119 to 202 lots. Grantham PUD is 1.68 dwelling units per acre and is going to have 200 lots total at the maximum. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Steve Harden with Fager Drinker is on the line, as well as Paul Rio with Platinum Properties, the developer. So with that, I would recommend City Council hold first reading and send it to Plan Commission for public hearing in December.
Thank you, Jesse. The petitioners, Steve Harden and Paul Rio, do you guys have any additional information you want to present this evening? Are you there?
Hello, President Coble. This is Steve Harden. I was muted. My wife often does that to me, and so I was muted there. So thank you for having us tonight. This will be keep this pretty short. Jesse did a great job of updating you on this. This was before it came to you with a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission, and then in September, when the proposal that included the additional land, the smaller lots, that received it was a 4 to 5 vote, and so the motion to approve was not successful in September, which was then an indication to the developer that the city would rather see the development planned as it's currently zoned as R2 rather than the PUD being approved. So that's what the developer did following the September decision, was prepared the plat, was getting ready to move forward with that, and then he was encouraged by some city leaders to give it another chance to present a revised PUD option for the city council's consideration. And if the city council likes this proposed PUD better than what would happen under the R2 zoning, then we would move forward to the Plan Commission in December and then come back to the city council. If the city council would say that, they would rather not see it develop as the PUD ordinance is proposed, would rather see it developed as R2, then that would be, the decision for the city council to share with the developer, so we don't go back through this entire process again to only end up with a 4 to 5 vote again. So we're really just trying to give another chance for the city council to consider this, and if you like this better, with the larger lots along Nestledown, the additional landscaping and buffering, maintaining the trees along 113th Street, the columns and fencing, the gated community, the more exclusive executive district, then we would pursue that. If the city council's decision is that they would rather not approve this and would rather see it develop as R2, then we just needed to have that direction provided. And so this is really just coming back to present it and talk about it with you guys. And if you like what you see and you'd like us to proceed to the Plan Commission with this, that's what we'll do. If you do not, then we won't. Paul, I know you're here. Paul, do you have any other comments you'd like to share with the council?
No, I think you did a good job. Did you guys, if I'm not muted?
Nope, you're not muted. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, President Coble.
No, I'll answer questions if we have any.
Okay, thank you, Steve and Paul. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for discussion and comments from the city council members. David George?
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Todd Zimmerman?
No comments.
Brad DeReamer?
I've discussed this with Steve Harden,
I've got a couple problems. One, the 5-foot setback, I will never approve a subdivision with 5-foot setbacks. I live in Brick Falls, I've already gone over all those horror stories we have out here. I've expressed that to Steve Harden, so, Steve, I appreciate you being honest and asking tonight, so you don't waste your time going to the planning commission, but I would be a no vote at the planning commission, and I would be a no vote at the city council when you bring it back. The other item we've discussed is the 20-foot setbacks, which has created tremendous problems in Brick Falls for people who trying to put on a patio. So with 5-foot setbacks and the 20-foot rear setbacks, I would be a no, just to be honest and let you know. I would rather see it developed as an R2. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam DeLong?
No comment.
Okay. John Weingard?
No comments at this time.
Okay. Jocelyn Dare?
I do have a question. It's clear that there'll be a decision ahead of us, either R2 or this proposed PUD that we see in front of us. I'm just trying to understand the differences there. I am familiar with our R2 zoning and, but R2, if I understand this right, R2 actually, I think Jesse showed it, has a larger minimum lot area than this does. So I'm trying to understand, like, how many, this would be 200 units, is that right? And how many would there be with R2 because lots would have to be larger, correct? Thank you. Thanks for showing that again. I think it's that chart.
The last one, Kay.
So, Paul, do you want to maybe walk the Councilwoman Bear through your, what you provided? I think everybody has seen there's an option with the R2. You can do straight R2. You can do the conservation plan, which allows more flexibility in the lots by right. So, Paul, you want to just walk through and what your numbers are, that if it was platted as R2, what those lot sizes would look like, and compare that?
Especially, I'm interested in the numbers, just helping me understand the number of units as well.
Okay, the PUD that we have proposed without the eastern portion is 200 lots.
Mm-hmm.
An R2 plat would run between 210, 220 lots, depending on the common area. The R2 allows what's called a conservation plat, which says if you save more than 40% of the open space, you can drop the lot sizes down to 80 foot wide by 150. So the R2 standard plan and the R2 conservation plan are a little different by which is allowed for in the UDO. And that's how we get the differences. We would, we're 35% open space with the PUD. We just have to increase a little bit more open space, and all the lots in the Southern Executive District could go to 80 feet wide. All those are 90 and 100 feet wide now. So the R2, simply speaking, allows just a little bit, just a few more lots than we show here. The R2 would then, we'd have to go through the process of platting without any waivers to ask for a count of the common area so that we could make sure that we meet that. But that's why there's a difference there, Councilor Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Rio. So if it was R2, we're looking at 210 units, did you say?
Well, it's a little bit of a math. We haven't gone to engineering to get to the final number, but we have a layout that shows 240. I think that's aggressive that we've done in-house. I think it'll be closer to 210 to 220. These concept plans are just as we've stated, concept plans. When we get to engineering, we look at slopes and ravines and drainage and creeks and all the things that the engineers do. We're probably going to lose some of those lots.
Sure.
Right,
I understand. So, back to our conversations before, a lot of the concerns were about density. So I'm trying to understand, but it seems like both options have comparable density. But any further information, Mr. Hardner, Mr. Rio, that you can share with us? There were several concerns with the first version that we reviewed a few months ago. So how have some of those concerns been addressed?
Well, my view is that the majority of the concerns were due to the eastern portion, the density, the 50-foot lots, the smaller product, the relationship to Mr. Sunderman, Mr. Sloot, Mr. Moore, who are on the eastern boundary. So those things have all been addressed, but the McGuires have decided to opt out and sell their 18 acres as a horse farm. They're adjacent to Mr. Sloot and Mr. Moore. Mr. Becker has agreed to keep the 24 acres at the corner for a future date. So my perspective is that the biggest concerns were related to small lots, exposure to Southeastern Parkway, and neighbor concerns, and we feel we've alleviated all that.
Okay. Well, and there was definitely a few concerns about just overall traffic and density in that area. I appreciate that. And then just one last question. I just want to be sure I get it. If it's R2, it's still that same 118.75 acres that
Correct.
we're talking about, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that additional info.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Bear, this is Steve Harden, while we're looking at the site plan, the other thing just to keep in mind, so Nestledown Farms is right there at the southeastern or southwestern portion of the property. And I know that you've seen a version of what the R2 plat would look like, but these are showing, larger lots that are, a lot less lots than you would see with the R2 plat. So the neighbors that are right there, instead of having 80-foot wide lots that are only so deep, these are extra deep, extra wide with additional buffering and landscaping. That's a pretty significant difference right there between the R2 and the PUD. And so, as we've talked before, that really ultimately the city looks at the PUD ordinance, and if you believe that it's better for the city than what would happen with R2, then it would hopefully be approved. If you feel that you would rather see the property develop out as R2 rather than the benefits of the PUD on balance, then it would not be approved. And so, I think the other thing that has come up a lot with people is the desirability of maintaining the tree canopy along 113th Street. That's been pretty important. So that's something that's different that would not happen or be required to happen or committed to with the R2, just like with the fence and the gate. I do know that we've had people ask about whether there would be a playground in the, at least for the family section. Paul, you want to address maybe what your plan is for the amenities, current thinking?
Well, current thinking is that the neighborhood of this number of homes at this price point would have an amenity. We're just working with builders to determine what that is. At the very least, there'd be a playground connected with all these trails so that there'd be a community amenity. I wouldn't commit at this time to a pool, although that's in discussion. So at least certainly playground and park type setting with benches and picnic tables would be appropriate in these wooded areas with these, paths and trails running all through. And I guess the last piece of the R2 versus PUD puzzle is the PUD comes with architectural commitments and the R2 plat comes with none. You just meet the standard minimum 1,600 square feet and the house passes muster, whereas in a PUD we've upped the standards considerably for the homes, which I think works to everyone's benefit, including ours, in getting a higher price for the lots. So that's all I've got.
And as you pursue the PUD, really the process starts over so that those good conversations with neighbors and Nestledown Farms, that will continue on. Right? That's a commitment that you'll make too moving forward.
Yes, and I've emailed the other residents who weighed in on the previous PUD and offered to meet with them again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bear. Pete Peterson, do you have any comments?
I do actually, and I appreciate both Tony and his staff going ahead and taking another crack at this. I was certainly in favor of it before. I am in favor of the PUD, particularly in this area, for the various commitments that have gone on between Paul Riu's group and his partners, which are going to go ahead and build this thing out. I want to remind everybody, we're getting another shot at this. I believe the council made a mistake last time thinking that they could go ahead and really kind of prescript, people's land rights. We're finding out that we don't have that latitude, people. We don't. We have to understand that if this doesn't get done as a PUD, in other words, we're able to go ahead and get the additional buffering, We're able to keep the fence line. We're able to keep the trees. We're able to keep the architectural standards that we want. This is going to go to an R2 plot. And if it goes to an R2 plot, it will not come back to city council. And they will build what is in our current UDO. Not saying that everything is bad in that UDO, but it's certainly nowhere near the standards that's coming in with this PUD. So understand that what we're going to have to do when we look residents in the eye and we say, we got another shot at this, another shot at trying to go ahead and build the best product in that corridor that fits with the current zoning. In other words, not taking away someone's land rights that is inherent to that piece of property. So again, the question that's been asked of us as a council tonight is, do we think this is something that should move forward to Planning Commission in a form and fashion of what they're showing us currently, or is it not? Because they don't want to go ahead and take this through the motions, through Planning Commission, waste all this time when they can go back and just plat it to be R2 and start that process there. So I think we need to go ahead and at least give Paul Rio and his group some sort of affirmation that we like what we see. We may have some more detailed questions after it gets back from Planning Commission, after we go ahead and chew it up there a little bit. But as a general concept, we're either going to like to look at this PUD further, or we don't have any interest in looking at this PUD, and it's okay to go to straight R2 zoning. That's the question really before us today on this first reading. Remember, we brought back first reading into this council because you guys, the council in general, wanted to have a say before it went to Planning Commission. I normally in this situation would not make any comments here. I would wait to make my comments in Planning Commission because that's really where kind of that rubber meets the road and we get them into a detailed setting. We come back to council and then we kind of regurgitate all this information with the recommendation from Planning Commission. So again, I need everybody to be a little bit sensitive to the question that's been asked of us tonight. He's already been through here once. Now he's coming back for a second time. If we have no interest in doing a PUD, we need to say we don't have interest in that. And then he'll revert to the R2, which I personally believe is a mistake. Okay, but everybody has their own say, and I'm only one vote. You know, there's only one concern I have about this particular project now, and that's abandoning that one property on the side and what's going to come of that as we move down the road. And that's a conversation for another day. But again, let's be sensitive to a developer who has done some really great projects around the county and make sure we give him the correct pathway that he can either proceed in there knowing that at least council is generally interested in him continuing this PUD, or we have no interest with that PUD going forward. I appreciate Brad's comments, even though he and I don't agree. He's given them his mind. That's where he's at, and that's what we need to tell these folks. So, you know, let's not beat around the bush here anymore, people. Let's be a little bit selective because we kind of threw him over the coals the last time here when we did this. So again, I think we need to go back and maybe make some more comments by council and saying, I like the PUD, I would like to hear more information on it, or no, I don't think it really fits what I want to see there, and I'm willing to let it go R2. So again, I'm very much in favor of this because I'm very protective of that 113th Street corridor. There's a vast difference between an R2 zoning and this PUD, big difference. And when you get into it as much as we do on Planning Commission, and those of us who have spent years on that commission going through all these things, we see those subtle differences. So again, I'm urging you guys to look at yourself today and say, yes, I want to hear more about the PUD, or no, I don't. That's all I got.
Thank you, Pete Peterson. Selena Stoller, do you have any comments?
Yes, when I look at this and I look at these neighbors out there, you know, and to tell them that, hey, I wanted an R2 there instead of this PUD, I don't think I could do that. I think that the neighbors around there will be happier with this PUD. Is it perfect? You know, maybe it's not, but I think it's better than the alternatives that we have. It does have the buffering and the larger lots against some of those homes. I think that's a definite plus. I like the way the canopy along the street and the fence is going to be maintained, the paths, the increased standards. I think it's going to be a better fit for this neighborhood than what an R2 would be. That's my opinion. And that's where I was last time because I did not want to see this to go in as an R2. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Selena. I just have one question. With the concerns that Brad DeReamer brought up in terms of the setbacks, any chance that those could be changed to address his concerns? I mean, is there any way to do that?
Well, I could look at the side setbacks of 5 feet. I think Brad is appropriately correct about what happens out in the Del Webb neighborhood. The lots are shallower. There's a very difficult time making screen porches and patios and sunrooms work on those smaller lots. But my minimum lot depth is 135, and everything in the executive section is 150, which means that the front setback and rear setback leave a ton of space for these traditional lots and these homes to have rear yards and backyards and so forth. The side to side in the family section, the 5 foot was put in to allow 3-car garages. I can't sit here and honestly quote you how wide every house is. I understand he has an issue with the 5 foot side yards, which creates a 10 foot area. And if they're not graded properly, they certainly can, not hold grass and hold water and things like that. So as I get with the builder and look at the specific houses, I can look at the 5 foot side setback before we get to plan commission. As far as rear setbacks and front setbacks go, these are pretty standard for us, and I've never had a problem at lots this deep.
Is there any way to guarantee the grading that I think the concern has been with Councilor DeReamer about, mold when the houses and the grading isn't great, you get mold issues. I think that was his concern.
Sure. Yep. Well, it's easy. It's being done right in a number of communities. I have numerous neighborhoods that are 5 foot, 0 side yard, 10 foot building separation is typically what we've been using in a lot of the empty nester neighborhoods. And it is a function of better grading and paying attention to detail with your buildings. It helps a lot to have a single builder and not have mixed builders so that the grading is more consistent. So it's definitely doable, and it's done all over. I can't speak to the specific neighborhood, to the area where he lives. I've been out there. I just don't know what the question is about drainage. The very worst case is you can put subsurface drain, between those houses and drain it another way rather than just relying on grading. But we'll be happy to look at that. I think if I talk to the builder about how wide these houses are with and without 3-car garages, there may not be as many narrow side yards as we think.
Okay, thank you.
And again, Cecilia, this is Pete, just to kind of put things in perspective there. And Brad makes an absolute point. Certainly the lot sizes in Del Webb are much smaller than what we're talking about here. I'm in an area, I'm in a development too, which has that minimum, and they are minimums, okay? That 10 foot side yard, 5 on each side. And I'm going to tell you the majority of our houses are well over that, depending upon how they situate that area. So recall, this is a minimum number, right? They can go bigger than that if they want. So that's a minimum in nature. And not all of them are going to end up there, depending on how the house is situated on each particular lot, et cetera. So I wouldn't get overly hung up on that standpoint. And I can tell you from the last 5 or 6 ones we've done, they've all been in the same standard. And I think Steve could probably speak to that as well, because I went back and looked with a number of other areas that we've done, all had the same kind of general setback areas for these yards. Now, again, with Brad's respect of talking about certainly front and back, having back porches, et cetera, I'm in agreement, right, that we want to make sure that people can do that. I added a backyard to mine. But again, I think Paul spoke to that specifically. These lots are much deeper than they are in Del Webb. So you're going to be afforded a lot more room to go ahead and build off a sunroom, a deck, an outdoor patio, et cetera, that you wouldn't have in a much smaller lot area. So keep that in mind as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Pete, for those additional comments. Do I have a motion to give ordinance 111620A first reading?
First reading.
Again, I want to make sure that everyone is chimed in, because I don't know that we gave Steve and Paul the right answers back to what they wanted to hear. Remember, if we're going to give this thing a first reading, I'm not asking for a vote tonight, but I'm asking for somebody that says they like the PUD idea, and we can chew it up when it comes back to council, and I don't believe we've done that.
Yes,
Pete,
so
now,
Pete, I would say I was in favor before and I'm in favor now. I like this instead of going to R2. I think we need to push forward that I'm going to be for this. I agree with, if they can look at Brad's concerns, I think that's something that definitely to look at. But, I'm in favor of this. So for what it's worth.
I'm supportive of it as well and wanting this to move forward. So I made a motion for first reading.
Thank you, everybody. So ordinance 111620A is given first reading, and it's now going to go to the Plan Commission for a public hearing and consideration, and then it'll return back to our council. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 15, 111620B. This is consideration of a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, as an annual cleanup ordinance for clarifying or fixing certain sections of the UDO. And it's up for first reading. And I think, is it Jesse who will be speaking on behalf of the planning department?
I'll actually be presenting this one. It's Tony Bagato.
Oh, Tony. Thank you, Tony.
And I'll share my screen here. It's just the ordinance itself. And this is usually done once a year, an annual update to the UDO when we find things kind of working in order, especially when there's a complete rewrite up in 2018. So most of these there's some inconsistencies from that update we have found, and also then some other minor items I'll highlight that have come up through, I consider them minor, so I threw them as part of the cleanup ordinance as well. And they're just listed basically in section order by the code. So the first one is related to our permitted use table. We found that in C1, it allows for bars, restaurants, fast food, and also retail. In the old UDO, it did not allow that, and that's because the intent in C1 is to be more office in nature. These are the smaller kind of commercial developments that are next to residential zones, and we wouldn't want someone coming in and putting a retail or necessarily a bar in those locations, and again, was not permitted that way in the old code, so we want to remove that as a permitted use. Then in the telecommunication tower ordinance, in the previous code, they were permitted in the agriculture zone, and I believe the standards we have in place are still substantial for agricultural zone allowance. And we do have at least one tower that I know of in the city that's in the agricultural zone today. So now, with it not being in there, it makes it non-conforming, and we want to bring that into conformance. So we're just adding any telecommunication tower to permitted. Then under our description of retail sales, there's no, in the list of uses permitted, there's no discussion of alcohol or what was labeled as packaged goods stores. My opinion is it still would be allowed, but what liquor stores tend to be controversial. A lot of people that want zoning verification want to make sure a liquor store is permitted. These will generally fall in C3, but we just want to, C3 has all retail, which is what it's supposed to cover. So we're just adding that language in there to make sure it's covered. 6.1.3 is being added. This was something that was not in the code, and this makes sure that we get conformance with all the other documents of the comprehensive plan, the thoroughfare plan, when someone's getting a building permit. So today we're only able to get these requirements usually through a subdivision process, and other communities around us are able to get it through the building permit process. This is important for if somebody just wants to build a home on a residential lot that's not platted, and we can't require them to plat the lot. We could still make them give us the right of way that's necessary and meet other provisions of the comp plan. And that's pretty standard, as I said, in other jurisdictions around us. So we want to add this into the code today. Then under our residential accessory structures, the old code had it at 18 feet, and in the new code it got put at 15. I'm not sure why. I think that might have been a mistake on our part. We found with COVID, a lot of people doing home improvement projects, and we've had quite a bit of variances for accessory structures because a lot of prefab structures are right around 18 feet. And so many of them were not complying with the 15-foot height limit. And also, if anyone permitted it in the past before 2018, it would have been up to 18 feet, could be out of compliance. So we want to change that to make it back to what it was. Then we have one change for our exempt signage related to content. There was one provision we found that still got into content under exempt signs. We regulated under our flag ordinance. We only allowed 2 flags, and it said one flag could be flown in conjunction with an American United States flag. We want to remove that provision because that is that is content-based, and we have found that with Westfield, they lost their legal challenge for a billboard for having a content-based code. So we're trying to make sure anything that could be an issue, we want to clean up. And we did make it up to 3 flags instead of 2 because we have seen a lot of businesses tend to have either a United States flag, a state flag, and another flag. So we're just making that up to 3 flags and not restricting the content. Then under 6.19, it's related to sewer. Now that we have a health department, Chris Greisel and health department added a code that gets into all the sewer requirements there, and we want to make sure that our zoning ordinance is not inconsistent with that. So we have removed our provisions, and then we're just defaulting to the city's municipal code, which is now the new health department for the incorporated area. So all the section related to that for sewer and water falls onto the city's health department, and we just basically removed Hamilton County and just left it health department in general because unincorporated area would fall under Hamilton County, but then incorporated would fall to the city. So we just left it more blank. And then under the defined terms is just lot coverage. We have older PUDs that have a different standard for lot coverage than what our current definition is, and they don't match. So we want to change this coverage. We still have lot impervious surface areas for newer PUDs in a different definition, but this will be more in line with our older PUDs and make those in compliance. So those are the changes you have before you and available for any questions, and this is for first reading.
Thank you, Tony. I'm going to now ask the city council members if they have any comments for Tony. David George?
No comments. Good summary, Tony.
Okay. Todd Zimmerman?
No comments.
Brad DeReamer?
No comment.
Sam DeLong?
No comment.
John Weingart?
No comments.
Jocelyn Dare?
No comment.
Pete Peterson?
No comments.
Selena Stoller?
No comments.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to give ordinance 111620B first reading?
First reading.
Thank you, Selena. Ordinance 11620B is given first reading, and it's going to go to the Plan Commission for a public hearing and consideration, and then it will return back to the City Council. Thank you. Item 6 was pulled from the agenda this evening, so we're going to move to item 7, any unfinished business or new business. Chris, do we have any?
Nope.
Okay. So we'll move on to the community comment. As I mentioned, we received comments prior to the city council meeting, and they're going to be put in the record, and they were distributed among the city council members. And I'm going to go opening it up to the community comment. Is there anybody at City Hall, Chris, that is there to make any public comments?
There are not. And President Coble, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Tracy Gaynor and his staff for putting together the work that they did tonight to be able to pull off this council meeting. I think it's a lot more seamless than what it was during the initial stages of our pandemic experience. And if we continue in this virtual route, I know they'll continue to make improvements, but just wanted to give them a special thanks for getting everybody on board tonight.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to, well, I'm going to close the public comments because we don't have anybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Selena. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have
Have
a
a great night, everyone.
Thank
night.
you.
Mayor Fadness? Mayor Fadness?
Jennifer, I think he came on, I got off the line.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.